Hello again. I'm going to be cooking a new dish today, but it's one I invented, but it's not far off something that's already there. But basically, I'm cooking you might be familiar with the Quiche Lorraine. Well, I'm doing it with Alsace Lorraine, which means it's going to have some extra bits in, which are more Alsatian. So a bit of German sausage, a bit of asparagus, and a tiny bit of cabbage as well. But this is going to be a wholesome favourite from that part of France, which I love to bits. But also, there are bits in this recipe which you don't have to do, which I'm going to do. So, for instance, I'm making my own short crust pastry. If you can't be bothered, or you feel unconfident, which I don't think you should because it's easy, by all means, buy your own pastry. But this is what I'm going to do, and it's going to be a Alsace Lorraine or Alsace Lorraine quiche. So I hope you enjoy it. It's easy, cheap, do it with the kids, enjoy it. See you in a bit. So for the pastry, I've got 1 egg beaten, got 160 grams of flour and 125 grams of butter. It's going to make short crust pastry with salt and pepper. For the inside of the quiche, 5 eggs. Here I've got 1 leek chopped. I've got a quarter of a sweetheart cabbage, and I've kept the tops of asparagus but kept the bottoms on of 5 rounds. I've also got bacon, which is going to go on the inside, some hot dogs. If you've got German or Eastern European, even better, but I'm only going to use 2 or 3 of those. And then I've got the juniper berries, and that's it really. What you can see here is what you need to get. Just make sure you've got a decent dish. You've got some blind baking beads or a saucer with some foil on, and first thing I'm going to do now is make the pastry. So now I'm going to show you how to make the pastry, which is a short crust pastry. First thing I'm going to do is I've just cracked some black pepper. If you haven't got fresh black pepper, use some out the mill. Next I've got the flour, and then the next thing I've got to do with the butter is I've got to make a breadcrumb consistency. Now I've let this melt a little bit, which isn't ideal, so if you're going to do this, obviously you won't be like chopping stuff up ready because you're making a video. Make sure they're freezing cold blocks, but cut them up, but make sure they're still cold, so keep them in the fridge. And then what you do is you literally try and blast these bits and bobs in your fingers as if they're breadcrumbs. So you might be able to see now, I've got massive blocks of butter. Slowly but surely, just do it all through your hands. Obviously I've washed my hands, make sure you've got clean hands. You pass it all through, like so. And you do whatever you will, but just make sure there's no big lumps. So you keep going, like so. I'm going to chuck that, keep it moving, keep it being sifted through hard through your fingers, like so. Like I said, you don't have to make your own pastry, I just think it's a bit nicer, and actually pastry's not that hard if you've got the time to do it. And short crust pastry like this is the same recipe you can use for pies, quiches, most savoury things really, and a few sweet ones. You just put, there's different recipes of putting sugar in, the method's the same. So you just keep passing it through, like so. So I said this is an Alsace Lorraine quiche, but actually I've got a bit of an OCD thing about that region and the bordering bits of Germany. I just find it fascinating how they're in different countries, but they've pretty much got the same culture. And there's a little village called Spicheren, and I'm a member of their group on Facebook, so I'm actually naming this quiche after them. It's going to be called a Spicheren quiche, or Spicheren I think it is. But it's basically where one of the massive battles of the Franco-Prussian War was. So as you can see, look, it's all getting nice, the butter's going into the flour. So yeah, I'm making this in honour of my friends in Spicheren, who are in France, but they're just on the border with Germany. So now I've really nearly got, I'd do it a bit more if I wasn't being on video, and as you can see, I do my own video editing, which is why it's so bad. I do this all myself. So now this is, I'm pretty confident there's no massive piece of butter in here. And then, so the next thing I'll do is I'll add the eggs. Like so. Or the egg, one egg. Then you move it so, and then the next bit will be the water. And I've got 3 tablespoons of water, which is going to go into my pastry. And you have to do it with your hands. There's no other way. It's mucky, but there you go. And just keep going until you've soaked everything up. And you've mixed everything in. The egg, the flour. Like so. If you need to add a bit more flour because it's a bit too damp, do so, but it might feel a bit too damp, and then it's fine. So this is drying up nicely now. Okay, so I'm about to roll the pastry out now for the base of the quiche. Put quite a bit of flour onto your work surface. I have got no room here, as you can tell. I live in a small house, small kitchen, so it's like as big a surface as you can, come so, but always make sure you've got some aside so you can keep dusting your pin. That having a really dusty rolling pin is really important. So I've got my dough here. You can make this dough the day before, by the way, and put it in the fridge in some cling film, but obviously it's freshly made here now. That's it. So you do that, and I'm not very good at this, but it goes. See, it will try and stick to the pin. So there we go. Every so often, dust your pin, and try and do it so you equally roll it out in different directions. There you go. It's sticking again. Get a bit more dust on it. There we go. Because you want to make sure that it's equally thinned out. Like I said, it's not an exact science, so you get some more flour on the pin, as much as you can, loads. It's more important to have flour on the pin than it is on the work surface. I'm a bit concerned. I'm quite filled. This looks a bit like a scream mask, but there we go. So I think that might just, if I do it that way a bit more, it's thin as ice, this is, and I probably should have re-rolled it. I'm going to try and put that in there somehow. So I'm going to remember the top's floury and the bottom isn't. So pull it over, get your quiche tin ready, make sure there's enough. Sit and let it sink in a bit. If there's a bit of overlap or a few holes, don't worry about it. It ain't the end of the world. So keep that over. Keep that in. Yeah, I've made a couple of little holes, but there we go. That's mainly in. Not the best job, but it's done. So, with the top of your pin, roll over the top of your quiche dish. Like so. Put away the rest of your pastry you're not going to use. You might have loads left over like I have, which means I should have probably made a thicker crust, but never mind. That you can obviously do again if you want to, or you could just make little cuts with that and make some savoury biscuits in the oven on a baking tray. Up to you. So now we've got that, we have to blind bake it, which basically means just to crust it up a little bit before you put your filling in. So I'll put a load of baking beads in, and as I said, I preheated my oven, so it's going on 200 degrees for 15 minutes. Whilst the pastry's blind baking, put your asparagus, your leeks and your cabbage and onion in a pan of boiling water and boil it for 10 minutes on high. So whilst my pastry is blind baking in the oven, it's nearly done. I've got a couple of jobs to do. So one of them is to chop the bacon. Now you don't have to use fancy bacon for this. It can be the cheapest one you can get at the supermarket or the butcher. But basically you just need to chop it into small slices so it can go in the mix, in the quiche mix. So if you've got little medallions like I have now, comme ça, like that. And then I'll do the same with the sausages in a minute. Like I said, I'm only going to use a few. I can already see in the oven my pastry's really shrank. So one or two things. I've either not made enough pastry, I haven't rolled it out properly, or the quiche dish I've used is quite a big one. So luckily, because I've used a big one and it shrank, it doesn't really matter, because once the eggs and everything are in, it'll hold it all together and it'll come out like a pudding. So I'm going to use 4 of these small sausages. Like I said, use German ones if you can get them, use them, or Polish or Lithuanian or whatever. I just got these from the supermarket last minute when I decided I was going to cook this earlier. So again, these are in like half a centimetre, that's a bit more of a centimetre, like so. And then next thing we can do is we have to get the pastry out the oven. We have to drain off the veg, which has been boiling. I added the juniper berries a few minutes ago just to give it a bit of flavour, but that's the onions, leeks and asparagus and the cabbage. And in a few minutes that'll come off the heat. Drain it, make sure it's as dry as you can get it, because it's all going to go. I'm going to use the old bowl I used for the pastry. It's all going to go in here with the eggs and get mixed up. So now we've got the blind baked quiche shell out the oven. I'm a bit disappointed it shrank. This is a recipe I normally use for a shallower one. I didn't think it mattered. It does matter. So by all means, adjust this for a shallower quiche dish, or just roll your pastry better than I did, or even better than that, buy it from the shop. But I've done it myself. And the good thing about having a deep quiche tin is you can put as much as you want in it, as long as it fills the top. And providing you cook it properly, it will set. So it doesn't really matter. It will come out as a set, like almost like a jelly. So to do the filling, let's move those baking beads out the way. To do the filling, you've got your 5 eggs. Like I said, I'm just using the same bowl I used for the pastry. It's all the same ingredients. It ain't going to matter. It saves on the washing up. So put your 5 eggs in, like so, and then you have to move them about a bit, whisk them about. That's a hard one. Forget my whisk. Make a bloody mess as I'm doing it. Alright. Get them whisked up. Next thing you need is your cream, which I've got here. 300ml. Double cream, can't be single. This isn't a diet dish, by the way. You can do diet ones with creme fraiche and stuff, but I'm doing the decent one. Now this veg has been boiled for 10-15 minutes, and I've really let the steam come off it so there's not too much moisture in it, because we don't want it too soggy. So that's all going in. Again, just mix that up, and you can already feel some resistance because the warm veg is trying to cook the eggs and the cream. And then the next thing you do is your bacon and your hot dog sausages. Let's get those in. Try and, if there's bits of bacon stuck together, try and separate them so that everything gets coated. And then just got to season it. I've already put a load of pepper in, so I'm just putting a bit more salt in. When you're eating it as well, just watch out for juniper berries, because they're edible, but they don't mash up. So with that mixture, pour that into your quiche, comme ça. Doesn't matter, it's gone over the edge because mine's in a proper quiche dish. And the next thing you need to do, put a bit of cheese on the top. Save a bit of cheese to serve. That's going to go in the oven now at 200 degrees for 45 minutes. So the quiche is out the oven now, and let's see how it's doing. So yeah, the pastry did shrink, fair enough, but the filling is there. It's wibbly wobbly, which it should be. Now this is a tricky bit. Get out the bottom, so I'll have to get a couple of cloths, tea towels. There we go. Slide it on. Ow, that was hot. Right, so there you go, nice quiche, and it is soft, nice and soft in the middle. Now you can have this hot, like straight out the oven of an evening, or you can refrigerate it up to 2 days, I'd say, because it's got fresh cream and meat in it. But it does do nice as a hot meal in any time of year really, but it's a nice summer edition. And there you go. I'm not very good. Nil pois for presentation. There you go. Inside's a gorgeous, creamy, bacony, asparagus-y, lovely thing. So I'm going to be having that for dinner a bit later. I'm going to let it cool down a bit before I eat it. But if you make it, eat it straight away if you like. Or, like I said, put it in the fridge for 2 days. This recipe, as I said, has been inspired by one of my favourite places in the world. And that's the village of Spicheren, which is just on the French side of the German-French border. And I hope the people there enjoy it as much as I do. And I'd like to say a big hello from Worcester in England to the people of Spicheren. Bonjour, salut, and goodbye from me. Adieu.